Hi everyone, welcome to the IoT Heroes show. My name is Tom Raftery. I'm the global IoT evangelist for SAP, and with me on the show today I have
Juergen Jakowski from SAP SE.
Juergen. How are you doing? Welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Can you tell everyone, Juergen, what is your role in SAP? What is it that you do for SAP SE?
Yeah, sure. So actually, since 3 years, I'm responsible for, let's say, information platform that is called SAP Enterprise Architecture Explorer. It has started 3 years ago when we started the project as an SAP UX Explorer. So maybe a couple of people in the audience might know that from that time with another name.
Okay, and what is the Enterprise Architecture Explorer?
So actually, when I just go back in history a little bit, 3 or even 4 years ago, I was a lot at events like TechEd and Sapphire and so on. And at that time, I was a lot into the topic of UI technologies and user experience. And what I discovered a lot is that people were asking always the same kind of questions, which they found not be answered through the common sources of SAP. And that was kind of the birth of the idea to say, hey, there should be somewhere a place where we can replicate someone like me and give the customers a good advice that goes beyond explaining just the product, but giving also some ideas about what are concepts that are behind products, what are the reasons why I as a customer should use a certain product or functionality. So that was the idea when we started with the project. And so over time, this of course grew up and expanded in a way that we today explain even more than just products, functions, and ideas behind that and concepts. We went the path into something that explains also methods, approaches, strategies, and this is actually the reason why the name of the Explorer has changed. So today we call it Enterprise Architecture Explorer because we see enterprise architecture actually as a good set of methods and ideas to structure content and to explain it in a way that we have a kind of a common denominator between each of us and can explain things more structured. And enterprise architecture comes with a lot of ideas into this direction.
So yeah, I was going to say that for anyone who is a regular listener to the show who might not be familiar with what an enterprise architect actually does, and also how that relates to IoT, can you kind of bring that home for them? What is an enterprise architect, and why would that be relevant to IoT in this case?
Right. So I think first of all important is that enterprise architecture is not an idea or invention of SAP. So it's something that grew up outside of SAP and is pretty common, I would say, especially in larger companies where you find people, as you said, are called enterprise architects. And the idea, or let's say the main idea of enterprise architecture is to look into a company starting from the very top where we talk about a business strategy, business ideas, business goals, business objectives, and then you transform that or translate that into a language that talks about capabilities. So what are the business capabilities? What are the IT capabilities that are necessary in my company to satisfy the needs of the business and the business strategy? And then further it gets translated into products where we talk then about what are the products in IT, for example, that need to be provided to satisfy, again, these capabilities. And then at the end of the day, it goes even down to the installation level where, let's say, larger customers would think about a strategy where to locate systems, how to build a landscape, and so on. So enterprise architecture has the idea to go through all that, and an enterprise architect would usually be a guy who kind of models that and drives or understands the connections between all these levels, speaks these languages somehow, at least maybe not in a very detailed level, but in a level deep enough to understand how to connect these things. So an enterprise architect becomes today more and more important from my perspective, because things become more and more complex, not because of SAP, just because of the world we are living in. And IoT is a pretty good example of that. IoT has also, from a landscape perspective, a complex view or point, because we are not talking any longer just about things that are inside my company. I might also talk about things, especially things like sensors and actors that are outside of my company, somewhere in the world, which makes it already complex on the landscape level, very down at the down level or bottom level of that idea. But even when you go higher, the question is, what are typical capabilities that are relevant for IoT, like maybe security? This is one thing people often mention as a first thing. But there are a lot of other things to consider here as capabilities that are required. And of course, you also, and this is maybe something where I believe that customers are still struggling with, what is, by the way, the benefit of IoT to my business? So there's a lot of talk about what IoT is and how beneficial that could be, but customers might still struggle with the question how this is really benefit to me and my business. And again, enterprise architecture can help here, because it comes with a very structured approach to tackle these questions and find answers.
Okay. And just from a practical perspective for a second, the tool, does it come on a CD? Do I have to install it? How do I get to it? How does all that work?
Okay, so the Enterprise Architecture Explorer is what we call a self-service. So it's available through a website. Everybody can simply access it and can look at it. Because you just mentioned the term tool, I would also like to mention that there are tools available in the context of enterprise architecture, which are usually so-called modeling tools. So an enterprise architect would usually use a tool like maybe our SAP Power Designer, or ARIS, or any other kind of modeling tool, and would finally then model across these different level his or her business. And the Enterprise Architecture Explorer is somehow kind of an information source that these people need beforehand to understand what are the options, what are typical methods I would use, how come all these things together. And with that knowledge, what they gather within our Explorer on the website, they can go back to their tool, to their, for example, Power Designer, and start modeling that into their existing model of their company. So that's the typical way of how also these tools or things come together for an enterprise architect.
Okay, and we'll put the address of the website up in the notes, and I'll put on the video here. But can you just say it out as well for people?
Yeah, sure. So it's pretty simple. You just go to sap.com/EA Explorer, and you will immediately land on our homepage, the start page of the Explorer.
Okay, and it's quite a graphical tool.
It's, yeah, on the one hand, it is in some places more, let's say, with a focus on text and information to read. But then we also discovered very early in the early stages of the project that we have different types of stakeholders, of course, and also different types of, let's say, needs or things that people like. So you will find people, they like to read, while others, like in our audience now, like to listen podcasts. And there are again others, they like to watch videos. So I would think 2 years ago we have started also to create videos that are kind of complementary to our content in the Explorer, where we explain, let's say, kind of an overarching idea, like what is IoT, for example, what are benefits of IoT, what is an IoT gateway, for example, because we saw that many people kind of were irritated because in SAP, in the context of SAP, there is already a gateway since a long time, which is the NetWeaver gateway.
Yeah.
You really need somehow, it's sometimes really the small things that make the difference that need to be explained. And so we have different, let's say, types of material, which is sometimes text-based, sometimes it's videos. We even have a tool or a tool function that allows us to kind of having a graphic that or a visualization of how things relate to each other. So you could later kind of browse that, for example, Fiori UX is somehow related to UI5 as a technology, and again, UI5 is somehow related to a kind of a platform like HCP or so. And then, of course, you can always drill down to understand what is the kind of relation, why is that relation, and what, by the way, is UI5, and all these things.
Okay. And for people who are deeply in the SAP ecosystem, I can see this being very useful. Do you see it also being useful for people who are just starting to dabble or who don't know anything about SAP or who might be interested in learning about the products?
Yeah, this is a good point because, as I said, we have a lot of different stakeholders, and these stakeholders might be CIOs, CEOs, enterprise architects, and all these people. All they gather information on the level they need, and they also drive decisions on their level. So also that administrator somewhere down at the installation level has to drive decisions the same like the CIO or the CEO. And it's the same with the differentiation between new customers versus existing customers. Again, all these guys have to drive decisions, but of course the kind of decision might be different. So in the case of a new customer, I would probably point them to first to some topic that is called Enterprise IoT strategy when it comes into the context of IoT. Because I believe even before I think about products, I should think about what IoT is, what it brings to me, and how I can form in my company a strategy and kind of a roadmap that helps me bringing all this into my company. And this is again something that is connected to enterprise architecture, because also here the focus is not to start with products. It's always to start with the business. Mm-hmm. And once I have understood what the business needs, I can then translate that into what that need means in products at the end. But I would not start with products. And sure. I think this is also what makes us maybe a little bit different to other sources of SAP and also valuable for our users. Because
it makes a lot of sense. I'm new to SAP, so I don't know most of the products.
Right.
But I'm told there's over 3,000 products in the catalog, which in that case, it would take forever to learn all the products in the catalog, and that's if you're an insider. Right. But for someone, a customer or a potential customer, to try and grasp that is just it's impossible. So something like this, as you say. If people don't come to SAP generally, I assume, with a product or a product set in mind. They come, as you say, with business needs.
Right.
And then they have to try and find out which of those products fit those needs. And that's what you're saying. That's where the EA Explorer fits in perfectly.
Exactly. So maybe one thing I need to add here is there's let's say a companion of us. So another tool that is called Solution Explorer. Mm-hmm. This exists also, I think, maybe 1 year longer than we do. And very often people ask the question, so what is the difference now between the Enterprise Architecture Explorer and the Solution Explorer? Right. And the fact is, the difference is that the Solution Explorer comes from a more business perspective. So it would catch up with the real business needs, like I need a sales management functionality in my company. And there I need, within sales management, I need to create sales orders and display them and delete them or whatever in more detail. And if you as a customer come from that direction of this is what I need, then you could go to the Solution Explorer, which is, by the way, sap.com/Solution Explorer, that you could learn what of these lines of business kind of features of SAP, what are they? So what can we deliver? And at the end also you can bring that down into products. What are the products connected to these? In the case of the Enterprise Architecture Explorer, it's more, let's say, the focus on IT personnel, on IT people. Also, the enterprise architect, I would say, is very often physically located somehow in the IT area. And these people also might look for functions and features that come from a business perspective, like I said, sales management and so on. But they also have a lot of questions in regard to technology and technology capabilities, like login things, security, as I said. User experience is another good example, which is not only a business issue, it's also an IT issue to find out how can I make things available, like new technologies like UI5, or how can I help people to let's say, modernize user interfaces. These are not purely questions of the business perspective, but also of the IT side. And there is where the EA Explorer wants to help people.
Okay, very good, very good. It seems like a fascinating solution, to be honest, Juergen. Where do you see it going from here? I mean, from where you are now to 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road. What's the vision for the product?
So maybe one thing I could explain here is we talked a lot about this in the past before I realized that it's a technical view, so I don't start with that first usually, but now maybe it's a good time for doing that. The Explorer is based on a semantic network of information. So whatever we put in the database of our Explorer gets somehow connected with each other. And we have what we call the IT focus areas, which are, others would say maybe they are buzzwords or just most current things to talk about. Currently, these are user experience, IoT, landscape architecture. And around these focus areas, we grew the database up with additional topics that fit into these categories, so that are connected to UX and IoT and so on. And then we started building the relations. And this is the reason, for example, why we have also this visual tool, which allows us later to also review these connections between topics and so on. Mm-hmm. So when you now ask how we see the future, then one thing is for sure that we want to grow in the area of these focus areas. We have a couple of things in mind, like growing into the direction of security. So security is not only, of course, as we all know, a topic of IoT, it's also a topic of even UX, where you think about how users can access data and so on. So security is a very central thing. Other things that security might be integration as another topic that is very, very important. So after all, I would say most of these focus areas have a kind of a cross-topic character. They are needed not only at one place, but across different places. And because of that, it's so important for the people to understand the relations and how to put things together. So this is one answer to the question how we grow. We want to grow in these focus areas. Yep. The other thing is that we learned that we need to do much more in the area of enterprise architecture. So people sometimes ask us, how did we came to a certain advice? They want to learn more about how we got there. And what we want to do is we want to describe the methods we are using. So for example, we have that already in the area of landscape architecture, where we are saying you as a customer or partner or whoever, you have now the chance not only to get our advice and our guidance, you can also understand how we created that advice, what are the methods behind that, what are the tactics or strategies we are using. And with that, we enable you to do the same for other things where we have no advice yet, where we didn't work that out yet. So we kind of enable people with methods, approaches to do their own things and start building kind of their own guidance. And that's for us becoming more and more important, because the complexity of that world means also we will not be able to explain everything and to give a guidance for everything. It's simply too much. So we need to find other ways that help people so that they can help themselves. And that's the reason why I think the second answer to your question is we want to grow in a direction more where we explain from an enterprise architecture direction how people can help themselves with methods that we propose.
So a lot of it basically is you're thinking of growing the product broader and deeper.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, very good. Fantastic. I think that's it as far as the questions I have, Juergen. Is there anything that you want to add?
Good question. So I think the most important advice I could give now is come to the Explorer and start probably with our videos, because very quickly you get an overview of what we are talking about. We also, for example, explain there what enterprise architecture is. We also give some examples. We explain what IoT is. We explain how important UX is and all that things. I think that's a good starting point for people, and from there you get a good picture of what Explorer is able to provide you as a helper, as a valuable help. And then just navigate through that. As I said, the relations that we build are also kind of a navigation. So people might, at the beginning, sometimes a little bit irritated, because usually you start on a website like there is a navigation tree on the left, and then you just go through the navigation tree and find, okay, this is of interest. So we do that different, because again, that complexity cannot be brought into a tree. And I even would say today, it depends on who created the navigation tree. So you will always find a navigation in a way how one person thought it would be good to navigate through all that. So we do that different. We say we bring up those videos, for example. We also have blogs, for example, to provide an first understanding so that people understand what is the right starting point for me to start my exploration. Then the exploration starts with a topic like IoT or like a product like PDMS or whatever it is. And from there, the relations are the navigation that help people to say, okay, now I understood what predictive maintenance and service is, but I also learned that this is available on HCP, HANA Cloud Platform. So now I want to understand what that is. And so the relation brings you forward and helps you to explore it in a way that fits to you and your needs, rather than to the idea of somebody who created the tree. So again, back to your question, I think people just should start with the videos. That would be my recommendation, and then just start exploration in our tool.
Cool, great. Fantastic, Juergen, that's been tremendous. If people want to find you online, where do they find you? And tell us again where we find the Enterprise Architecture Explorer as well.
Right. So you can find me pretty easy in Twitter, for example. My Twitter handle is JJComment. So like JJ will also wants to give a comment. That was my idea many years back. And you can also find me, by the way, in Twitter. I usually use a hashtag when I post important things about the Enterprise Architecture Explorer. I use the hashtag SAPEAX. So that is an easy way to find me as well. Great. I'm also on LinkedIn, of course. And you can also write us whenever you have an idea, you miss something, you have whatever need. You can also mail us with eaexplorer@sap.com. That's also pretty easy. And again, the website can be accessed through sap.com/eaexplorer.
Fantastic. Juergen, that's been great. Thanks a million for coming on the show.
Thank you for being here.
Right. Cheers.